The FIA has decided to cancel the rookie race that was supposed to happen after the end of the 2024 Abu Dhabi GP, as it looks like the governing body wasn't really keen after pumping up the idea and receiving some pretty wide support for it. But with all the latest scandals revolving around the governing body, will this have a huge effect on the credibility of the FIA? And if so, how can Ben Sulayem save his position in these difficult times? One of the most hyped up ideas in the past couple of weeks was the sprint race for rookie drivers after Abu Dhabi, something that received really good support from the majority of the teams and high-profile members. Obviously, Max Verstappen has been very supportive because as a driver who entered the sport from his 17th year of life, he understands how important it is for upcoming competitors to start sooner rather than later. And the sprint race would have given a very unique opportunity for these drivers to have a competitive feel inside an F1 car. While the FIA is doing what they can in order to give the reserve drivers some time to adapt to F1 machinery by mandating teams to give at least one free practice session to these youngsters, it's not enough because technically it's not a competitive session. They're just gathering data and showing what they are made of in a session where all they have to do is not crash the car. On the other hand, we've seen that drivers who are given a one-shot chance, like Colapinto and Lawson, as well as Behrman, have proven that once the pressure is on, the difference in how they approach the race is quite visible. And that's why the teams would have loved to see how their academy drivers would have got on in a one-off race in F1 machinery. So it's quite a disappointment for those F1 team executives, especially for Red Bull, who have drivers like Ayumu Iwasa and Isaac Hadjar that Marco is very happy to see compete in this event. In the official statement that was released by the FIA, the common agreement of the F1 Commission was that there is no time and conditions to organise this event as quickly as the idea was born, as it was postponed for 2025. Furthermore, the statement said, the concept of a rookie race to be added to the 2024 post-season test schedule at Abu Dhabi was discussed. While the concept received widespread support, it was determined that due to timing and organisational constraints, the event would not take place in 2024, and discussions will continue to formulate a potential concept and plan for 2025. Obviously, this is a sport in which there are lots of changes and sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything, but that's why these meetings are very important, and the input that F1 bosses and young drivers have is crucial to pushing the sport in the right direction. In the latest meeting of the F1 Commission, the topic of the F1 sprint race was not the only thing that was discussed. There were also some changes about the 2026 regulations that have been proposed and accepted in the last meeting. The structure of the sporting regulation side has been simplified, and some adaptations were also sought on the technical regulation side, especially when it comes to the aerodynamic performance and safety of the cars. Obviously, the new regulations are a huge unknown to everyone on the grid, and that's why the teams are seeking more testing time for the new cars. So the FIA has now accepted the proposal and has implemented a lot of the changes for 2026. Here's what they wrote. The timeline and structure of the 2026 regulations covering technical, sporting and financial matters were discussed following discussions during the recent Technical Advisory Committee meeting and ongoing talks with Formula One teams. A number of amendments to the 2026 technical regulations in the area of performance, aerodynamics and safety have been included in the latest iteration of these regulations. These involve an increase in the expected aerodynamic performance of the cars following extensive collaboration between the teams and the FIA over the last few months. Apart from the technical and financial structure that will now allow a bit of a fairer play in the sport compared to this point, the sporting regulations have also undergone changes as mentioned in the first part of the statement, and the most notable one maybe being the 3-day testing period that the teams will have for their cars. Obviously, this is the period in which they are understanding a lot about their cars, and considering the fact that they will be brand new with a massive revamp to the entire chassis and electrification process, the grid will definitely make the most out of those total of 9 days of testing for the cars to see where they are standing with their competitive machines. Furthermore, the statement wrote, The 2026 sporting regulations have undergone a significant revamp, seeking to simplify their structure. In terms of substance, the 2026 pre-season test schedule will involve three-day tests in recognition of the challenges presented by the new power unit regulations. The 2026 financial regulations will be an evolution of the current regulatory framework. The objectives of the 2026 regulations are to provide a competitive balance between sporting fairness and financial sustainability. These three updates will be presented at the World Motorsport Council on the 17th of October. This is good news without a doubt for the future of the sport, but what is also very important is to not lose focus on what is currently happening, which is the flexibility of the front and rear wings and the allowance of the FIA regarding it. While the governing body has made it obvious that they won't allow the mini DRS of McLaren to go any further, it's still not deemed illegal because the car that won the race, the number 81 of Piastri, was not disqualified from Baku due to the fact that the FIA didn't have enough evidence to prove that what they are doing is illegal. What came as a conclusion is that it gives the car an advantage that we shouldn't be looking at in the sport, but even on tracks that have high downforce circuits and the mini DRS doesn't come to attention that much. The MCL 38 has won races by an advantage of 20 seconds, Zandvoort and Singapore. And this is where the flexibility of the front wing comes to mind, and the FIA has made it publicly known that there is nothing wrong with this part of the car, not just for McLaren but also for Mercedes. This is why Ferrari and Red Bull are going to follow a similar path themselves from Austin onwards, but it's yet to be seen whether this is the silver bullet they need in order to compete for race wins in a similar fashion like the McLaren cars. While this is still somehow a grey area, considering the fact that the FIA might or might not take action for 2025 regarding this part of the car, it is still deemed legal for the remainder of 2024, and therefore it should give you a picture that loopholes in the sport have existed for quite some time and teams have managed to work their way around them more often than not. On top of that, there are some current issues that are yet to be addressed, one of which is overtaking under dirty air conditions. While the narrowing of the cars has definitely achieved the goal of having closer racing and being able to follow a car for a longer period of time without overheating the tyres, it's still far from achieving the goal of overtaking in an easier manner when you are in dirty air. In Singapore, we were able to see how much dirty air has made it difficult for cars to overtake, and the only advantage they could have used is the fresher tyre and the ability to brake a bit later in the corners. Whether or not the FIA would have achieved this goal from 2026 onwards, it will be up to us to wait and see. But the fact that the governing body has a lot to deal with, including the swearing scandal with Verstappen and the controversial community service penalty that he's received, remains to be solved. The credibility of the FIA is something that has been put under a lot of pressure in the past couple of months, and whether or not these changes will help them to be able to dig out of a deep hole is going to be one of the most interesting situations that we can keep an eye on in the foreseeable future. But as Ben Sulayem said, the FIA doesn't get credit for anything, and they've been pretty active in bringing new sponsors as well as new partnerships to the sport, so he doesn't expect that the narrative towards them will change sooner rather than later, especially not with the British media against it. With all this in mind, what do you think about the cancellation of the rookie race in Abu Dhabi? And more importantly, what do you think about the 2026 regulation changes? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and once you do that, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.